Sometimes the world just feels like this total blur of disconnected headlines. It's almost impossible to keep up. So today, we're going to hit pause. We're just going to take one single chaotic week, the first week of September 2025, and really try to make some sense of it all. So let's zoom in together on these 7 days and see what kind of picture emerges. And we're going to start with a number, 2,200. Now, this isn't just some piece of data on a screen. This is the human cost of a massive, magnitude 6 earthquake that struck Afghanistan this week. As the aftershocks kept coming, this number became this really stark reminder that some of the biggest events shaping our world aren't political or economic at all. They're natural, and they are deeply, deeply human.
And that really brings us to the whole point of this explainer. What does 1 week on our planet actually look like when you lay it all out? I mean, it's this wild mix of tragedy, global power plays, protests in the streets, and huge celebrations, all happening at the exact same time. So let's try to piece together the puzzle of this 1 week.
Okay, so first up, let's turn from the natural world to the world of geopolitics. Because this week, a few major nations were putting their alliances on full display. It was all about strategic posturing, sending these huge messages without having to say a single word.
And you couldn't get a better example than what happened in Beijing. They held this massive military parade for the anniversary of the end of World War II. But really, you've got to look at the guest list. President Xi was hosting Russia's President Putin and North Korea's leader Kim. I mean, the image of those three leaders standing together, watching this huge display of military might, that was the real event. It was this incredibly powerful visual statement about where they stand. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, that picture from Beijing was being seen very, very differently. Former U.S. President Donald Trump weighed in with this comment, basically framing the whole thing as a major loss for the West. It's a political reaction that just goes to show how powerful and how provocative those images from the parade really were.
This slide just captures that split-screen reality of our world perfectly, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the official events as they happened. You have the parade, and you also have this really significant election in Thailand that barely made a ripple in the global headlines. But then on the right, you see the political narrative, which just zooms in almost entirely on that perceived shift in global power. It really shows how the very same week can tell two completely different stories, all depending on who's watching. But while all these leaders were busy focusing on the global stage, a whole different story was playing out back home. There were these immense pressures building up just beneath the surface.
Let's take the United States, for example. The August jobs report came out, and, well, the data on this chart is pretty clear. Unemployment is ticking up. For millions and millions of people, this isn't some abstract geopolitical game. It's a very real, fundamental anxiety about their jobs, their families, and it's exactly the kind of pressure that politicians have to answer for.
And that kind of pressure, it often leads to these really bold political declarations. In the very same week as that jobs report, former President Trump made a vow to completely get rid of the Department of Education. It's a promise that taps right into those domestic frustrations. And it just goes to show how anxieties at home can fuel some pretty radical political promises.
And this feeling of unrest wasn't just in the US, not even close. This slide shows that dissent was a truly global thing this week. I mean, from Mexico City to Berlin, from Jakarta to Tel Aviv, people were out in the streets. The reasons were all different, sure, but the act of public protest itself, that was a story shared across continents.
That internal pressure doesn't always come from people protesting in the streets. Sometimes it comes from within the system itself. Like in the Philippines, where a major corruption probe was launched into these huge public flood control projects. This is a really important example of a nation trying to tackle its own deep systemic problems, another kind of internal conflict playing out this week.
So, okay, we've seen natural disasters, we've seen power politics, and we've seen domestic turmoil. But a week is always more than just crisis, right? It's also filled with these moments of joy, of remembrance, of the human story just carrying on.
This is such a powerful example of that duality. In India, you had millions of people participating in the incredibly vibrant Ganesh Chaturthi festival, this massive, beautiful cultural celebration. And yet, all that joy was happening right alongside this incredible tension as authorities in Mumbai were investigating a very serious bomb threat. It just shows the amazing resilience of culture, even in the face of our modern anxieties.
And this week, the world also took a moment to pause and mark the end of an era. The fashion legend Giorgio Armani passed away at 91. And looking at a timeline like this, it really gives you some perspective. Amidst this frantic 24/7 news cycle, here's a life that spanned nearly a century and left this permanent mark on global culture, from his iconic power suits in the 80s to a worldwide empire.
And along with Armani, the world also said goodbye to the Duchess of Kent. It's a quiet reminder that every single week is also defined by who we lose and the legacies we all pause to remember.
And then, on top of all of that, there's everything else. You've got an activist flotilla with Greta Thunberg setting sail for Gaza. The Toronto International Film Festival was kicking off. Over in sports, Djokovic was battling it out at the U.S. Open. And then out of nowhere, a Tyson-Mayweather rematch was announced for 2026. I mean, the sheer volume of it all is just dizzying, and it all happened in the same 7 days.
So we end up right back where we started, with a question. After seeing just 1 week laid out like this, from earthquakes and alliances to protests and passings, what do you think? In this constant swirl of crisis and celebration, what are the stories that will actually be remembered? What are the events that are truly going to define the time we're living in?